Okay, so today we're doing the porch deck. This porch will be a covered porch. There'll be a post, a turned post, like an ornate post or whatever you call it, on each corner, and then a gable roof on top. It's a 412 pitch, so it'll match this one. Anyway, so on a porch deck, they're all kind of the same. I like to run my deck boards this way. So you got to run your floor joist this way, which is a little different. So what I do is, on this particular one, because I'm wrapping this with siding to match the house, and then it'll be a 1x4 trim around it. I'm not putting lattice or anything, so I didn't need to worry about these. Probably if you're going to use lattice, maybe you wouldn't want to have so many of these. But anyway, yeah, so I just framed a short wall again. I think from the foundation to the top of the double top plate, or the bottom of the floor joist, it's like 14 inches. It's not very much. So in between here is like 10 inches. So it's really not enough to put lattice, and it doesn't really work with the design of this house. So anyway, so I just framed 16 inches on center all the way around. It's all pressure treated. Everything's pressure treated, of course. And then yeah, so overall it looks like this. And then I like to put a pitch on porches, so I like them to pitch down. I pitched this one 2 inches. Now this is 6 feet wide and 16 feet long, so it pitches down 2 inches. I mean, 1.5 inches would be enough. I just do 2 inches. It doesn't matter either way. And then in order to do that, what I did is I built the wall the same height all the way around. Now you could build this as an angled wall, but it was just easier for me to just cut all these blocks all the same length, and then I framed it level. And then what I did is I took a 2x4 and I ripped it here at 2 inches down to 0, and you get 2 pieces out of a 2x4. So it's a 6-foot piece of 2x4, so you get this 2 inch, and then the other angle, going the other way, and then you can get 2 pieces. You're not using 6 foot of 2x4 for each piece. Okay, so anyway, so I ripped those, and so I put one that sits directly under this rim joist here, or this floor joist, and then there's another one that sits here on the inside edge of it. So you got a 1/2 inch gap here, basically. I mean, you could put it flat up against here, but anyway, I just did it that way, and then these floor joists sit on top of that. All right, so that tapers these down. And then the center one, what I did is it's a double 2x6, and then I simply tipped this. I didn't cut wedges out of 2x4s and put them on top of here. I just framed this down at 2 inches, or down, sloping down 2 inches to match. Okay, so that side's 2 inches higher than that side, and in the double 2x6 tips down 2 inches. And then on this particular situation, because of the way that I framed my foundation, and it's kind of hard to see, but there's a lip here, right, that comes out almost 1.5 inches, a lip on the concrete. So I was able to just post off of that with a 2x6 to carry that into the double 2x6 beam, center beam. I toenail it into the house. If this lip wasn't here, okay, then I would have had to cut a hole in the plywood. It's pressure treated plywood behind here. It's on some earlier videos, but I do pressure treated plywood 16 inches up because it's crawl space behind here. Anyway, I didn't want my OSB coming down that close to the ground. Anyway, I would have had and then go inside and post on top of the foundation. It's a short wall, just like this one here. So I would have had a post, but I just got lucky because I had a lip to post on. So I just posted off of that. And then here, I posted off the foundation. I got a 2x6, and I just put a 2x4. I don't know if I really need it. It's really not holding that much weight. Anyway, so this beam runs to the back side of this 2x4 wall. It doesn't go inside and post down. It posts on the foundation, and then it stops here. Right, so So that picks up all that weight. And then I simply toenail these into here. So that's kind of a simple way to do it. And it's enough so that basically it's really less than an 8-foot span for these 2x6s. I did them 16 inches on center, so it's more than enough for strength. And then on the deck boards, what I did with the deck, the way I do it is I don't like to see the ends of all the deck boards, so I do a picture frame. Takes a little more time, but I think it looks a lot nicer. This deck is going to be painted with a gloss oil paint when it's done, so it's going to kind of look like an old school deck. So basically I miter these, and then I toenail in here with these are 12D nails, so they're I think 3 1/4 inches, or 3 1/4, 3.5 inches long. They're ring shank nails. They're the ones I use to nail the decking down. Anyway, so I toenail one. It keeps the miter. It doesn't really keep it from separating if the lumber shrinks, because these will open up. For some reason, exterior miters will always open and close with the weather, but it keeps them parallel, or level with each other this way, and just kind of locks them together. This is kind of a weak point. So anyways, I do that, and then what I did is I used a flashing here, and that flashing, it's a Z flashing. It comes up a 1/2 inch, goes back 1.5 inches, and then comes up 2 inches. So it goes over the first floor joist, which is the floor joist is intermittently nailed to the foundation or to the framing behind, and then I set this in a bead of caulk. I don't think water will ever get behind here because this is going to have a roof on it, but it's you don't have to do that. I didn't want to cut the paper and then try to put the paper over the top. I mean, I don't think it's all that important. Like I said, it's covered. It wasn't covered. Yeah, I mean, I probably would take some of this house wrap, because I've got some left over, and this is self-stick, kind of an asphalt type product. I probably would have applied that here to go down over the flashing, if this was not a covered porch, just so water wouldn't get down behind. But anyway, so I want the siding to go behind these. I don't want the siding to sit on top of these, so I left these out 3/4 inch. So there's a 3/4 inch gap here, and then the siding will go down behind it. It's hardy board siding is what I'm using, lap siding. Anyway, so I did that, and then I used nails on these instead of screws. And the reason I use nails, I use 3 inch or 3 1/4 inch. Let's see, what are they? 3 1/4 inch ring shank nails. With a painted deck, especially when you're using like a gloss gray oil paint, or semi-gloss, I think they hide better. Because if you're using screws, and you usually use square drive, now you see that hole. And they don't always sit down into the wood nice. Sometimes they rough the surface around the hole when you're driving them in. And then, of course, there's a hole in the center. And so when you paint it, you see all these holes. But with nails, you can pound the heads down flat. They just blend in a little better in a paint situation. If you were going to stain it or something, I guess it wouldn't make much difference. But anyway, so that's why I used ring shank nails instead of like 2.5 inch deck screws. Yeah, so okay, so that's that. And then this is 5/4 decking, which is typical. What I do is, because it's green, it's wet, it's going to shrink. Sometimes it takes several months. I put the boards tight together, and then when they dry out eventually, because right now they're gonna shrink probably down to, I don't know, 5.5, 5 3/8. But right now they're like 5 5/8, even 5 13/16, because they're green and they're wet. It's pressure treated lumber always comes. So I just put them tight together, and then when they dry out in the future, you have a decent sized gap. If you try to gap them in the beginning, when they dry, now you're going to end up with big gaps, more than 1/4 inch and stuff. And to me, it doesn't look good. Plus, it's a kind of a safety hazard if women have high heeled shoes. Anyway, so that's the way I do with decking, with green decking. If it's kiln dry decking, like if you're doing cedar or redwood, it's not as important. Although that even kiln dried stuff will shrink a little bit, especially if the hot sun hits it. So anyway, so that's how I do that. And then as you know, especially with pressure treated, sometimes the boards are crowned, right? So if they're crowned bad enough on the back side of the board, like in the middle of it or wherever the crown is, usually it's, the whole board is crowned. So these are 6-foot pieces. So let's say it's crowned. I turn the board over the back side, and then I'll take the circular saw and I'll cut like halfway through, halfway down, and then I flip it back. And now that you've cut the depth like halfway through, and I do it where, I don't do it out here somewhere. I do it where the joist is, where that cut will sit on the joist, because you're going to lose some strength if you don't. But it makes the board easier to bend straight, to straighten out, because you want to try to, you don't want to have all these crowns, and you want to kind of keep them on a straight, and also when they dry out, your gaps will be more even. But it's easier to force that thing into place up against the one you've just nailed in if you've cut like halfway through it, because now it's trying to straighten out basically a half or maybe 5/8 of an inch of wood, because these are an inch thick, right? They're 5/4, but they're an inch thick. So if you cut halfway through, you got a half inch by 5.5. It's easier to try to bend that thing than trying to bend a full thickness. I mean, you can, especially if they're longer. I mean, if you're using longer pieces, they're 10, 12 foot, 16 foot. For this, I bought 12 footers because then I'm going to cut them in half. There's basically no waste. Anyway, yeah. So it's just a little trick. I mean, I do that even when I'm framing inside. If I've got crooked plate, for your plates, your bottom and top plates and all that, I'll cut partially through, and then it's easier to force it into place. And then straightening them out, to straighten them out, if they're crowned, I use this called a cat's paw or a nail puller. What I do is I'll nail in one end. Let's say I'll nail in here, and because I'm nailing close to the edge, I drill first, because otherwise you can split the wood. If you don't have a drill, you can turn the nail upside down like this. You can put it on top of another nail, and then you can whack the point with a hammer to try to flatten it out a bit. That'll help prevent splitting. It's an old carpenter trick, because the nail, instead of the nail forcing its way through as a wedge and trying to split the wood, it'll crush its way through as you pound it in. You don't have to flatten the point completely, but whack it a few times. But put it either on concrete or on top of another. If you put it on wood, you'll just make it the head will just go into the wood. It'll still flatten the tip a bit, but it's better if you put on top of another nail. And then whack it hard enough not to crush the tip a bit. The nail, I mean, it straightens these out. It has straightened these out. And of course, if they're longer, it's a lot easier. Another way you can do it is, if you have thicker material, if you have 1.5-inch materials, you can do that. You can also pound a nail in at an angle into the side of the board. If you're good aim with a hammer, you don't crush the board. And you can use the force of the nail to push the board over. You can just keep, after it goes all the way in, you just keep hitting on the nail head, and it'll push the board over, but it won't let it spring back. I do that even just in regular framing. It's not even decking. Just you framing and you want to move something over, you can put a nail in at an angle here, toenail it in the side of the board. These are a little thin for doing that, and also they're not that strong. I mean, I can move them with the cat's paw. But anyway, so that's a little trick for getting them straightened out. As you can see, I've got them all pretty tight. So when these joints dry in the future, they're going to dry evenly, and so that the gaps will look pretty even. Because if you start letting the boards do what they want, eventually when you get down to the other end, you got to kind of keep them on the straight. Like as I get down farther, I'll measure from, these are done already, so I'll measure from here to here, and then over here to here, and I'll make sure that I'm kind of staying on track. If I need to kind of bring them back in line, so when I get down to the other end, I don't have this crooked wedge-shaped piece to cut. Let's see here. When do I turn the camera on? Okay, yeah. So anyway, sorry about that. I'm trying to hold it with one hand, my right hand, and I'm left-handed, so it's kind of it's not my most coordinated hand. Anyway, yeah. So you want to make sure you're kind of staying on track. Otherwise, you'll get down to the other end, and next thing you know, that the distance from here to the last board it may be 1/2 inch different or something, and then probably most likely that last piece is not going to be a full width. It's going to have to be ripped and it'll be crooked and it'll look weird. So you can adjust these. I mean, if you start having a different distance from here to here as you do, this end of the board, you can, maybe you can gap this one over a 1/16 of an inch, the next one is 1/16, something like that, and you can kind of get it back on track again as you're going along. Because this is framing lumber. I mean, it's this end of the board and that end of the board are not necessarily the exact same width, so it's easy to get off track, especially when you've got probably going to have at least 30 pieces across here or whatever, to finish it out. So anyway, I think that's it. I think that kind of covers everything. I mean, this is how I do it. I mean, other people have other ways, but for this situation, this is what I found to be the easiest way to do it, simplest way. Let's see. I think that's it. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Back to work.